Hello everyone and welcome to PCRX. So today I'm closing another chapter in phone history for myself and saying goodbye to a friend, the Nexus 6. In my time as a cell phone user, I've taken tens of thousands of pictures, sent an inconceivable amount of text, used terabytes of data, made hours and hours of calls, and while doing all of that, it was with the Nexus 6 that I've had the best time. I've had 21 cell phones since 2006, 11 of those being smartphones, and the last time I can remember being quite as happy using one was over 5 years ago, back when I had the Samsung Galaxy S2. And I've had phones from quite a few manufacturers: LG, Motorola, Samsung, Sharp, and Asus, but none have quite compared to the reliable, smooth, wholesome Nexus 6. I guess you could say I have a somewhat long history with Motorola, starting with the very first cell phone I ever held in my hands, the Motorola StarTAC, moving to the first phone I ever bought with my own money in high school, the iconic Moto Razr, and when moving to a smartphone, it wasn't long before I owned a Moto G. But more recently, it's been Moto's designed Google Nexus 6 that has been with me through the toughest parts of my life, and become my favorite. So what am I saying? Do I think Motorola makes the best phones hands down? Well, no, not necessarily. But I will say they can sure make a great product. Back in 2015, it was a tough time for me. I went through 2 surgeries that year, and my phone at the time was the Asus Zenfone 2, until it started having issues and it had to be RMA'd. So when I looked for a replacement, I found the Nexus 6, a 2014 flagship on sale for an incredible price of $199. So naturally I couldn't let that pass by, so I picked it up and have been happy since. In this day and age, phones have almost become a counterpart to our everyday lives. So choosing one that will last and provide a great experience can sometimes be a gamble. It was after using the Zenfone 2 that I realized one of the keys to that experience might be simplicity. The Zenfone has one of the most bloated out-of-the-box UIs and can sometimes be tiresome to use, where my time with the stock Moto G was completely the opposite. This led me down the road to Google's Nexus devices and their knack for being completely pure Android. It's been almost 2 years since I traded up to the Nexus 6, so in that time, how has it held up? As you can see, it's in pretty fine shape. I tend to be somewhat easy on my phones, but considering the fact that I've used the Nexus 6 with no case the entire time, it definitely looks great. So what about the design? Has the phone aged well, and did it help towards the experience? In a nutshell, definitely. In my opinion, the Nexus 6 had a great design to begin with. A large 6-inch screen, which to some might be too big, but over time I became spoiled by. A partial metal design, 2.5D glass, dual front-facing speakers, and Moto's curved back design, which I'm a fan of and feels comfortable in the hand. There's no fingerprint scanner or USB-C here, but the phone looks nice, and if you don't have small hands, feels good to use as well. Even in 2017, it's still a looker, and feels somewhat premium. The Nexus letters and Moto dimple on the back are a nice touch as well. The only complaint I have is the plastic lip around the display. It interrupts the smoothness of the screen by being sharp, and tends to be the only part of the phone that has taken the most noticeable damage. But other than that, no real complaints here. The Nexus 6 sports a 6-inch 1440p QHD AMOLED screen with a nice 74.1% screen ratio and 493 ppi. It also has Corning's Gorilla Glass 3, it's crisp, has good color, and outdoor brightness has never been a problem. It does, however, have a pinkish tint when turning the brightness down for night use, which I'm not sure if that's a defect in its design or it's supposed to be like that. It also seems to have a problem with auto brightness after the most recent update. Sometimes setting the backlight to max when unlocking can take an extra few seconds to dial itself down, which can blind you in the dark. Either way, the display is still quite great, and the resolution remains better than the majority of 1080p phones today. One of its advantages over most phones are its dual front-facing speakers. They're not the best sounding, but they're plenty loud and much better than single-speaker designs. They do sometimes have a problem with delay when turning on, and have a fade-in on some sounds when playing from them, including the ringtone, which can be a problem when the beginning of the sound is what you want to hear. The audio jack works well and sounds okay, but it has noticeable background noise and fuzz. Also, music can sound flat without an equalizer, which can only be used in apps that have one, as third-party EQs seem to have no effect. Performance, on the other hand, has usually been great. The few games that I do play on my phone play well. Apps and everyday use is fast and smooth. But recently, that's kind of changed. It may be due to the fact that I'm using almost 100% of the phone's capacity, which I'll get to soon, or that the battery saver mode slows it down. The Nexus 6 has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 805, a quad-core running at 2.7 GHz, an Adreno 420, and 3 GB of RAM. It was released in 32 and 64 GB flavors, and does not have add-on storage, which is a problem. I have the 32 GB version, and without more storage, installing many apps or even using the 4K camera for mere minutes can quickly fill it up, leaving you with choosing what you might have to delete. As far as the software, well, it's stock Android, so there's not much to say or complain about here. It's gone through its fair share of updates though, starting all the way back with Android 5.0 Lollipop, moving to Marshmallow, and finally to Nougat 711. And that's an advantage Google phones have. They almost always receive updates immediately and are the first to get them. Battery life on the phone has been pretty average. With 3,220 milliamps, it has always lasted over 5 hours of on-screen time for me, and continues to get between 3 and 5 hours 2 years later. I'm kind of a light to medium user, but sometimes I have days where I wear the phone out pretty quick playing video and browsing the web. It also has wireless and quick charging. The camera on the Nexus is pretty great. It's a bit behind phones of today, but it can hold its own. It has a 13 megapixel f2.0 aperture 28mm sensor with optical image stabilization and a dual LED flash. It has decent detail and color. The app is quite basic, however, and to get the most out of it, a third-party app is best. Video on the camera is excellent and is capable of 4K, which is still less common today. So to wrap up, the Nexus 6 is a phone with many features and specs comparable to today's standards. It has a decent camera and battery life, quick charging, a great display, and a nice set of speakers. It does, however, have smaller, non-expandable storage, glitchy sound, and updates that, while being fast, can sometimes cause problems. So in retrospect, the Nexus 6 has overall been a great everyday companion, and the best phone I've ever used so far. I'm sad to see it go. With an aging, non-replaceable battery and Google actually ending official support this year, it's time for something new. That being the ZTE Axon 7. It has comparable design and specs, and is in the top 3 of mid-range flagships, right next to the OnePlus 3 and Huawei Honor 8. I'll be doing a separate unboxing video and will be sharing my reasons for choosing the Axon. So, thank you Google and Motorola for designing and creating a fantastic product. So that's it for this video, but feel free to comment below if you have a Nexus and what your experience has been, or let us know what your favorite phone is. Thanks again, and don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Chris from PCRX, and have an awesome day.